Can you see that?
Oh, yes. Very nice. That's very cool.
That's what I thought. Right.
Greetings, YouTube. Welcome to Sunaru Gaming. I'm Slayer Sar. This is Graham Pike, creator of New Earth. Today's talk is about Neo Geo. So, Graham, I don't know if you want to get us started with a general one or whether you want to tell us about your first impressions of Neo Geo, how you first sort of came across it, and what was your first experience like?
Sure, yeah. I didn't get into consoles till quite late. I think it was 1990 I got a Mega Drive. Before that I'd played in arcades occasionally and pubs, as I told you at last talk. But
Yeah.
I managed to get a Mega Drive. That's pretty much when it first came out in this country. I think it was about 1990, and started off, just playing role-playing games, but I didn't like them that much, and got into action games and Sonic and all that stuff. Anyway, funnily enough, well, this is when I lived down south, close to yourself, and we went to Beckenham to Raven Games. In fact, I went with your dad, funnily enough, just to have a look around, because I'd become aware of like imported games and these odd consoles, because as soon as you get those consoles, you start buying all the mags. In those days, there were some really interesting mags. You had Mean Machines and CVG,
Yeah.
and
They were everywhere, and they came with like free demos and things, didn't they? Well, not
yeah,
so much for the Mega Drive, I guess, but
no. But anyway, so we went over there to have a look around, and they were big on import games. But anyway, the woman there she said, "What do you think to this?" And it was like Neo Geo. This is about 1991, I think. It came out in an arcade in 1990, like
okay.
about April, in Japan. And then 1991, originally they thought it was a good idea to rent out home consoles. So the MVS was the arcade machine. Then they had the AES that came out, but they thought, well, because the games are so expensive, we'll rent them. But people wanted to own them, obviously, and buy them.
Yeah.
And so I saw some games running, and I thought, wow, just the graphics was like, instead of tiny little woody sprites that were pixelated, these were big. I was all 2D in those days, but it just looked great. It's like, like you see something, you want it, And but I didn't buy it immediately. But that was the sort of starting moment of Neo Geo, and probably within a couple of months, I got one. It was expensive business, but I couldn't afford a collection of 100 games. It'd have probably been about 5 at a time. And
Yeah.
fortunately, because they were pricey, there were people that wanted to swap. So you'd meet up somewhere and do a swap or something. There were some shops that rented them as well, but I preferred to own something really, and then you can really concentrate on it. So yeah, it was straight away. It was, oh yeah, let's find some sort of walk along the beat ups over. And then as soon as you think, oh wow, it's actually in the arcade, and that was the total magic of the system was, if you wanted to see what was up and coming, or even a game you fancied, if you looked around, you'd probably find it in the arcade or find something you hadn't seen before, and that was what's so good about it. But yeah, my initial thoughts were, this is amazing. So I was get on my old-fashioned 4x3 telly, but I got the biggest telly I could afford at the time.
You say it was Goodman's.
It was, yeah, Goodman's. Yeah, it was. It was probably, it wasn't as good as a Sony, but it was massive. It was, for the time, it seemed humongous. Everybody that came into the house was like, yeah,
I remember it being massive.
Yeah. And like now, compared with our flat screens, it's not. But at the time, it seemed huge. But I think and also, what happened with the Mega Drive, because it ran at 50 hertz, the English one, you've got borders top and bottom, which obviously in the Neo Geo didn't, because most of the games were Japanese.
Yeah.
But were from Japan, or they did do UK or European issues, and American as well. But yeah, that's how I started off. I quite soon was trying to make contact with other people, just because there was so little in the press or on the television, apart from Games Master, which used to have the games on. That was a little bit later on, I think. It was hard to get coverage of it or find anything else about it. So I started this little thing. I think it was like Neo Geo Northwest, because that's where I live, in the Northwest now. But it was only it's like a little couple of page thing I just sort of started writing out, but it didn't really get anywhere. And I was I think that's right. There used to be it's called KT Consoles. It's games shop up in Caithness, right in the north of Scotland. And in those days, my way of getting information, I just ring round the import game shop and just talk, run up the phone bill,
Oh, okay, yeah.
rabbiting on. There's no mobiles, PC. I didn't have a PC,
Yeah.
and it was so it was like talking to different people. So that's how you picked up, isn't it? I mean, the guy at this KT console said, "Oh, why don't you do a fanzine or something?" I thought, that's good. I like writing about things, and I like the console, so that was the idea, and it sort of took off from there. That was the New Earth fanzine.
Yeah.
And I think that added a huge amount for my enjoyment as a console, because not only are you getting these new games through, and or you get to write about them, and you look at them a different way, because you're not just you're studying the music, the backgrounds, how the sprites animate, and rather than just having it as the effect, you actually. But it doesn't really. You're not being overly critical. You just makes you pay a lot more attention, and
yeah.
So that was good. And then I can't remember when it was released. I should have looked it up really, but I think 94. I can't remember was the Neo Geo CD came out. And this was SNK, who obviously people that make Neo Geo. It was their attempt to try and go mainstream. I don't know if you've heard much about the Neo Geo CD.
Was the I have very little knowledge, but my impression was that it had longer loading times compared to the cartridge. And I don't know if my knowledge is.
It was different, different world. Well, what happened was they made quite a nice machine. It pretty much was the same as the cartridge, but they only put a single speed CD drive in it.
Okay.
So I mean, games were small in those days, but these were big. But so initially you had what seemed like an endless wait, but it was good for the older games like Soccer Brawl and the games from the early 90s, because they were only, I think, once you loaded it up, it had enough internal memory to take one of those games. But once you've got games that are above about 80 meg, sometimes you get mid-game loading, which could, if you had a game that was like the big fighting games or some of the big shoot 'em ups, like 200 or 300 megs.
Oh, can imagine those shoot 'em ups.
Yeah,
big loading screens.
So it was a big note. A lot of people hated that. I mean, for me, I had both, and I liked having the CD, because you could buy a new game for £45 instead of £200 or something. So
how did that compare to a loading screen for something like from the Sega Saturn or something, or the PlayStation 1?
Well, I can remember one time I used to have this little juggling monkey, which was quite entertaining. I mean, they changed because the only sort of nod to improving the system was they brought out a thing called the Neo Geo CD-Z, which was a supposedly double speed. And yes, it was faster. Okay. I don't know. I mean, I never really compared them. I should have timed them, sort of like I just assumed that it took half as long. But yeah, it did speed things up. And it was a nice little machine. So I actually I had both at one time, I think, which was interesting because in Japan, Japanese version and the English or American version quite often had subtle differences. Often they'd be more, censored in the Western ones. The most traditionally well-known one is the animated boob bounce. They take it off in the Western one. It would offend somebody, and just I think some of them they turn the blood from red to white.
Oh, really?
Like it was sweat. Yeah, I mean, and also some of the intros are, sometimes the intro would be longer. You get a more interesting intro on the Japanese one. Because I think my Neo CD was UK, my Neo CD-Z was Japanese, so it was quite interesting to load them on both and see what the difference is. It's a lot. So it's quite often it was the intros, but yeah, it was just like another little thing. But yeah, it was a bit annoying. But there's a lot of annoying things in those days, because I can remember when you couldn't play any foreign games on UK consoles.
Yeah,
you had to get some sort of cheap disc or a cheap chip to go in.
Yeah,
which was crazy really, because the people that just wanted to play Japanese. They probably weren't interested in getting bootleg games, but because they got them chipped, they could then run bootleg games as well. So, which made the companies more paranoid. If they'd just done like they did eventually with the PlayStation 3, or they just said, it's just not national boundaries don't count. You can play anything on it.
Yeah,
we should have done that from the beginning. I can't see a difference between them selling a game in Japan or in England. If it's the same game, you paid for it.
Definitely.
What's the difference? But they didn't see it that way for quite a while. But yeah, Neo Geo well, you could play them all on the different ones, but for some reason they made them a bit different.
That's interesting. I can imagine American censorship being pretty strong.
Yeah,
But something like, I suppose I remember there being a lot of information on the news about them, or a lot of debates on the news around blood in video games in the 90s anyway. Mortal Kombat, I think, was near the forefront of that as well.
yeah,
The violence and people were getting offended over it, which just seems utterly ridiculous.
yeah,
But well, it does now. But yeah, that's a strange thing, especially something like a boob bouncing and stuff like
yeah.
that, because most kids probably wouldn't notice that anyway.
Well, yeah, who knows?
Yeah, it's
But
just
uh, it's just like a post-Victorian sort of morals thing that seems to have cursed this country and America even
yeah,
in a worse way for
yeah.
years. Of
How did the experience try? Because I know that you said in our arcade talk video that the home console version was pretty much was exactly the
yeah,
same
yeah.
as the. But how
As
did
far
that
as that,
translate to a home environment? Because I know that it came with like a joystick.
yeah, yeah.
How did that
Basically,
translate to sort of, I suppose, on your lap to just standing up and
yeah.
playing? Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, yes, it was different, I suppose, but the controllers were very similar. And as I mentioned before, you had the memory card, which in a way gave you a bit more chance of completing some of the games because you could go back to the beginning of that level once you lost, rather than having to go back to the beginning.
Ah.
And you could. I mean, it didn't make it drop dead. It wasn't like had infinite lives because I was just totally ruined. That was another problem with the Neo Geo CD and CDZ. A lot of the games they more or less you could just carry on playing it, and it sort of took away the challenge.
Mm,
Unless you had your own self control. You
yeah.
know, like on a shoot 'em up, you think, I'm only going to have 3 continues and one more, one more. But it's not what you want really. You want that challenge. You want that. You've got to go back. You've got to do it again and get it right this time.
Yeah, I think you can do that on a lot of the ports now, that you can choose how
Yeah,
many credits you put in. I try and limit it. It's a little
yeah,
bit more than 3 that I limit myself to, but
okay.
you,
Yeah.
you
I
do
mean,
try and limit it.
yeah. So it's like I mean, loads of Japanese shoot 'em ups I've imported over the years. Yeah, I always put it to the max, but usually they don't give you more than like 9.
Mm,
But yeah, I
yes,
mean,
yeah.
the purists would like cringe at that, but I just think, well, I want to get as far as I can.
Yeah, and sometimes
But
you want to see what happens at the end of the game. You might not always get there on a
yeah,
handful of credits as well. So,
the difference, as you were saying, between the arcade games were actually, even though they were the same, say the cartridge was the same, but it was housed differently.
okay.
But and some people that collect now have modified their adult in terms of like the home system, so it can take
Oh,
the yeah. It's a bit like in the original Nintendo, Super Nintendo. Oh no, not that Mega Drive. The only difference between Japanese and the UK one was it had a bigger cartridge, so all people did was cut
mm,
around the edge on their English one, so they could squeeze the
oh, I
Japanese one in.
see.
It's
Yeah,
really
that's,
simple. That was on the Mega Drive, but on the Neo Geo, they didn't have that sort of thing. But I never. I know now that on the collectors market, I think the arcade games aren't as collectible as or aren't as expensive, should I say,
yeah.
as the collectible
I
home
suppose
games.
they're not aesthetically pleasing as the ones that were built for the home units as well, because
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
presuming
they
the
look
ones for the
more.
arcade are very bare bones.
Yeah, I mean, it was called the multi-video system because it was quite unique when it came out in 1990. You could put like 3, I think, I'm not sure even did a 5, but it was traditionally a 3. So you had 3 games in machine and you could
Mm.
flick, you could choose, you could go onto it and there'd be 3, very different games usually. And you could choose. And also apparently it was relatively low cost for the people that ran the arcade. So it was actually quite successful and it
Yeah,
was the most
because a lot
powerful.
of most of them were just one machine, one game, weren't they?
Yes, but Neo Geo wasn't. There was at least 3, and I think they might have done a 5. I can't remember. But yeah, and when it first came out, it was the most powerful machine. I think it wasn't until '93 or something that Capcom caught up and did stuff that was as powerful. But yeah, it was for its time. It was really powerful. Going back to I still always preferred playing at home because you got your big screen. Because arcade, unless you're nowadays in arcades they did develop, but mostly you were playing in these little stand-up arcade things, which were like, I don't know, 14-inch screen or something, which was good. But that was the best thing because back in those days, as we said on the arcade talk, there were a lot more arcades around. Even in Burnley, our nearest little town, even that had some little arcades. I'm not sure if you ever came in one, but and at the back there'd be about sort of 7 or 8 machines, and at least 2 or 3 of them would be Neo Geo. So. But if we go down to Manchester, that's if I wanted to, I could find. If there was a new game out, I could usually find it.
Brilliant.
And so it was excellent.
What were your first Neo Geo game purchases? What was the first few games that you got?
I seem to remember that Robo Army was the first one. I seem to remember, like we were talking about technical difficulties earlier. I seem to remember getting it home and something not running, and because you paid all this money for this expensive console, and you always want a second controller as well. And these controllers are massive. I did have one down there, but I haven't at the moment. But they're huge, and so it was all expensive stuff, and the games themselves, I can't remember. But I think I got 2, but I can't remember what my other one was. But I remember Robo Army because one, I really like walk along fighting games like Streets of Rage, and 2, like robots. And I had played it in the arcade, and I really liked it. But I loved that game for a while. It was just so. There was some great clanging, somebody, this robot, it was, and you could pick things up and whiz them at people, It was a really entertaining game. Even now, I can enjoy playing that game. It had little things like sometimes you'd be sliding down ropes. You had to jump across from one rope to the other to avoid.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
All sorts of it. It wasn't just walk along. They added little bits to make it. But and it was always the element of the wacky as well. Like you'd have a robo dog, and when it destroyed it, it collapsed into little robo bones. It was just the way it was. It was I don't think technically it was a great game, but it was very enjoyable to play, and the music again was good, and particularly sound effects, and it was a good scrapper. But he had a few like that on the Neo at the time. There was always, even on the Neo Geo, my favourite console, there were a few duffins on there and a few average games. I say the percentage was higher than other consoles of good to bad. But they produced some shockers. And if you paid £100+ back in there, like 30 years ago, on a game, and it was a bit of a naff, it was a big disappointment, especially if you've been waiting for it.
Is there any you can remember though? Remember bringing home and it was just disappointing?
Oh yeah, King of the Monsters, which is basically it was a bit like you were in a little city and you had these monsters bouncing around. It's a bit like a wrestling game almost, but Godzilla. One was like Godzilla, but they had different names. One was King Kong and a few other, and it was all right. That was like not the best, but then there King of the Monsters 2 was coming out, and I'd only seen screenshots, never saw it at the arcade, but they looked much better, like they really improved on it. And it was a bit more like a walk-along fighting game. So I thought, I can't lose on this one, but I found the game. But when I got it home, it was disappointing. It just didn't play that well. It looked nice, but I slightly preferred the first one at the time. And it wasn't as graphically as nice. But there was a few that, there was a game I was really looking forward to, because there was a stage to the Neo Geo sort of thing where virtually every game, or every, 3 out of 4 games they produced was a fighting game, because they were very successful with the Samurai Showdown series, King of Fighters, Fatal Fury, Art of Fighting. Those 4, they were, so there's like, I don't know, I'm not nerdy enough to know exactly how many of each they did, but there was a lot. But the only one as I really liked was Samurai Showdown, because it had that wacky sort of over-the-top Japanese approach, which I liked. Whereas the other ones are more like serious sort of fighting games, really. But they're all serious. But anyway, so when a non-fighting game out, I was really looking forward to it anyway. So and I quite like the way they did sports games. I say Soccer Brawl, Baseball Stars 2, even Football Frenzy, which was a really weird sort of American football game they did. I even got into that and enjoyed playing that. Purists would probably think it was the worst game ever, but I quite liked it. But anyway, there was this game called Stakes Winner, a horse racing game.
Oh, okay.
And it had these like cute little graphics, a little bit, not quite the usual Neo Geo hyper-powered graphics, but I thought, that'll be a load of fun. I read it, I thought, you just sort of like teasing the horse along with a crop, and then anyway. So I remember getting it on the Neo CD when it came out. And I sort of finally, because it was really strange, because I went down to this arcade shop, arcade in Manchester, and I looked across, and it had like the stand-up sheet, and it had Stakes Winner. I thought, yes, I can find out what this game's like. It wasn't on there. It just had the like those sort of translucent sort of advertising out on the top of it. Which I have to say, I don't usually steal things, but I thought I'm having that. So, for one, because the game's not on there, and two, that'll go in my collection. Thank you. Anyway, so first time ever. Anyway, so
allegedly.
So yes, so that was it. Anyway, so finally, it did come out and see. But two things wrong with it. One, it was only in Japanese, and there's a lot of like you have to train your horse and do stuff apart from just and it was just like that made it really hard. And then the game itself, just I couldn't get in. I couldn't win a race, and it just seemed like again, that's probably my most disappointing game. Not that it was the worst ever, but funnily enough, when I got more recent, last year or so, I got back into it, and I went to meet probably Britain's top Neo Geo collector, Fraser Rhodes. He who lives not only a few miles from me.
Okay.
I went over to his place, and he says that he saw Stakes Winner 2, which I'd heard about but hadn't played, and he got out and he played it, and because it had an English sort of thing on it, and he actually, when he won a race, I thought that's not that bad. Anyway, so I played it myself, and I could actually win races. Now, whether it was better than one, or just my brain was more in gear, or the fact that it had some English text, I don't know what, but it went from like 1 out of 10 to sort of 5. It was never going to be a great game, but it was actually better than my initial thoughts. But at the time, it was a big letdown because I looked forward to it so much. I mean, obviously, I always prefer like shoot 'em ups or other types of sports games on the Neo Geo. But it was known and it was very for the one-on-one fighting games, which were always in competition with Capcom, of course.
Yeah.
And later on Konami. I did get into it and enjoy a lot of one-on-one fighting games, but that's more like I had to, really. You couldn't be a Neo Geo fan and just say, "I'm not playing those," because that'd be like 70% of the games coming out. I couldn't even and I had to, and sometimes because I was having to do a review, I just get through to the end. I couldn't review it if I hadn't at least seen what happened. So you just play and play and play until you. I say when those sort of games, I usually just found the fighter I seem to have liked, and just find techniques to overcome. But I was never like a quality fighter. If I come up against one of these Japanese whizzes who trounced me, but I could get through to the end with the persistence and the. I just find when you're used to playing these games, your mind sort of tunes in, but sometimes slightly subconsciously as to what the best technique is, and I think with a lot of games, if you just do it, if you did it purely on your conscious sort of, you wouldn't be quick enough. You've got to react. You've got to
instinctive.
Yeah, definitely, and that was definitely the case with certain Neo games.
Go on. Sorry.
I was just going along on the sort of games. There was another game that was. I've told you when we're talking about arcade games. I said one of my all-time favourites was Pulse Star.
Yeah.
There was a sort of sequel, but it wasn't. It was called Blazing Star, and I think it was done by the same people, but it looked completely different. Whereas Pulse Star had a very sort of 3D look to it, like the way it was shaded, and Blazing Star had gone back to much more 2D. But I'd seen it in another arcade in Manchester. I played this Blazing Star. Oh yeah, and then there I am waiting for it to come out, and I could never get hold of a copy. It never came out on the CD. I could never get hold of a copy of it on cartridge either. So it was a real letdown, but eventually I have played it, and it's good, but it's not as good as Polestar in my opinion. But there'll be other people that will say otherwise. But
it's funny how contradicting opinions on sometimes sentimentality as well. I think that can play into it a lot, because there's games that I've played that I consider it the best one, but I suppose if I took a step back, it's not necessarily. But then there are sequels to games and then just not as good.
The thing with the Neo Geo was, there were certain developers that just produced a handful, like about 20 games, and they'd just try them in local arcades, probably in Japan. And if they didn't take off, the game would never get mass produced. So, and those are the games now that are incredibly expensive because there's so few of the originals left. And so whether they're absolutely brilliant or not, most of them probably that didn't make it weren't that brilliant. But and if there's only like 50 official ones in the world, it's going to be worth a lot more than one they produced. I mean, I don't think they ever produced huge amounts on the cartridge.
Yeah,
I don't know what there is.
I downloaded a port on the Switch of Samurai Showdown 2, and it looks amazing. Actually, some of the backgrounds in that game are fantastic.
Yeah,
and
I like the
it's
music.
Fun to play. Yeah, the music's really good as well.
If you like, I think the most beautiful is 4. It's
4,
really
okay.
Yeah, I just really like. I mean, so I wasn't a big fan, but the Samurai Showdown I sort of took to because I played the one in the arcades a lot, in this little arcade down in Burnley. I played it there, and I really enjoyed it. And then, and I think I got them all over there. But yeah, 4, there was something really good about it, not just playing wise, but it just had a lovely feel to it, the way it looked, the music. But yeah, so yeah, I know what you mean though. Yeah, they do. I mean, that's what Neo Geo, SNK, or whoever programmed mostly. I always found that SNK, when they were at that height, when they were doing their own games, nobody could beat them. Although Metal Slug wasn't done by SNK, it was NASCAR, I think, that did it. And there are some other developers that have developed some great games, but Metal Slug wasn't SNK. But yes, the early fighting games, and Soccer Brawl and Baseball Stars 2, they're all done by SNK, and they were just. I think that's, to me, that's some of the best really arcade game, so, that I've seen over the years.
Brilliant.
Just being good and mostly playable, really.
Yeah.
But it's not like anything. You can't tell somebody that hasn't been there what it's like, because it's like if somebody that was around in the 60s knows what a huge difference. Like bands like the Beatles and the Stones made, and how different they were. But now that everybody else, when you've been brought up with Justin Bieber and stuff like that, they just sound like some pop. I've had people say to me, "Oh, the Beatles, they were just another boy band." And honestly, I don't like violence, but you really feel like smacking them in the face, saying, "Why don't you actually talk about something you know?" Because it's just nonsense. But anyway, that's the same with games. Really, it's hard to describe how good these things were. And most people, like if I don't know, a young person, I said, "Here's Soccer Ball, have a go," they'd probably, wouldn't like it at all. But who knows?
like you were saying in Arcade Talk video, that something like Soccer Brawl, it's not, you don't play it like football.
No.
It's got a different feel to it. I think the fact that these games, the Neo Geo games, still stand up today. I mean, the fact that I can turn it on and they're so readily available on any of the consoles, and there's still games on there that I play a lot anyway. Obviously not quite as many. Galaxy Fight's obviously the one that ticks the box for me at the top. But the fact that they're, like you're saying, I wouldn't have known specifically, although I was around during that time. I was so young, I wouldn't have noticed the change between various different consoles and gaming in the arcade. I mean, but you can see it looking back. I mean, if you compare to games that were on the Mega Drive and on the SNES that were in the arcade, and then you look at the home consoles and they're naff. But when you have with the Neo Geo, you can see that the Neo Geo is very different to these other home consoles in regard to the quality and how it comes across.
Well, yeah, but they were far more mainstream. Obviously, the Neo Geo was very much niche. I don't know how. I read somewhere that overall, in all that time, I think they sold 1 million consoles in all.
Yeah, that's not a lot.
Wow. So it's like, I don't know if that includes the CD, but I think the cartridge. But anyway, it's not a lot. What the Neo Geo world has become now is a collector's world, because obviously there are still. I think it was last year there was an indie game came out. I can't remember what it was called. And as I said in the arcade talk, there are some indie people that do it on the Dreamcast and the Neo Geo, but serious games. But they haven't produced what I call like company games or proper official Neo Geo games for a long time. But so now it's a collector's world, and not only it's an expensive one, but what is the interesting part of it is I'm not a collector, really. I'm not, apart from musical instruments, perhaps. I still like doing, and SNK really produce some amazing artwork and books and figures and everything. They still produce it because there's a market for it in Japan mostly, but still over here as well. And that's the world it's become, really. I did my magazine for about 5 years, ended at the latter end of the 90s. And I sort of carried on Neo Geo on and off for a while, and then sort of sold the system. And it was about 20 years. And then this guy called Fraser Rhodes, who wrote a really good book on the Neo Geo, I got contacted him. He tried to write. We'd met back in the day, back in the 90s. He'd come around my house to buy a bit of gear off me or something.
Okay.
And anyway, he'd gone on a Neo Geo forum, which one I can't remember, and just said, "Oh, do you remember this fanzine?" I remember Graham Pike, and I lived in Nelson or somewhere I was living at the time. Anyway, so I thought, "Oh, that's interesting." But I saw it, but the post that he'd put on this forum was like 2 years old. So I thought, I'm going to put on it. So yeah, that's me, blah, blah, blah. And anyway, and then he messaged me, but I think he didn't think I was the real person. So anyway, so we had a couple of twos. I said, "Oh, it is actually you, yeah." Anyway, so that sort of, and then I suddenly became aware of that there is still a lot of followers for the system. They don't just follow the Neo Geo, but there's a lot of people that are big fans of the Neo Geo and collect everything that comes out on it, and around the world, really, because with the New Earth, we reproduced all the old New Earths. So I can't remember how many there are, but at least 50 or more of them, and we just he arranged to have them all printed up and distributed around to the fans.
Brilliant, yeah,
which was really nice. So it sort of, and so I actually redid the magazine for about a year, which I'll send you a few copies of, and it was like weird. It's like after 20 odd years or more, I was suddenly sort of rediscovering it. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, but it had a limited life of about a year because I'm not a collector, and really there's never going to be any new games. So all I was doing was I did actually manage to get to play a lot of games I hadn't played back in the day because either I couldn't find them or they just bypassed me one way or another. And plus I was re-looking at some of the old games, so I really enjoyed it. But it had a limited life because I'm just not a collector,
It's that's something, because I probably would have bought the console a long time ago, but it really is a matter of how much it costs.
Yes.
Now for the game, more like you were saying, more so for the games than the console itself. But you also mentioned that the arcade cartridges are cheaper than the actual home console cartridge games.
I think they are, but they're still not dirt cheap. I don't know. Well, what they've done is, I can't remember what it's called now. I should have looked into it before we started this chat. They've got this thing which I've got, which is I've got an original Neo Geo cartridge console, the AES system with controllers. But what they've done is this guy somewhere in Europe, he's got it looks like an original cartridge, and that is somehow. You put that in the machine, and then you've got a little SD card, with every single Neo Geo game, including the most obscure ones you've ever seen, never heard of. You plug it into the side of this cartridge, and it's got all these games, and they're not rubbish. They're not sort of horrible. They're pretty much, it's the odd one, which is a little bit weird, but most of them are exactly like the. I say this because one, I've got one and I've played them, and two. Fraser Rhodes, who is probably the Neo Geo expert in this country, he uses it all the time. So, but mind you, he has got pretty much every single game in cartridge form that ever came out. So he's got. I've seen it. I've been around his house, and he's got this massive collection of. And I can't imagine how many tens of thousands of pounds worth of games are there.
Yeah, I suppose that stops him sort of any damage to anything or any work.
But it is good. I should remember what it's called, but I can't. But I don't want to plug it. But if anybody, it is a good way of getting. But yes, and also personally for me, one, I could rediscover them. But to be honest, I downloaded a lot on the PS4 already, which I think are really good conversions. All those hamster ones. But this had obscure games I'd never heard of. The ones that I'd vaguely heard of, but there was the odd one I'd never heard of it, And they've got they've got the English version, the Japanese version, the arcadey something version. There's like, you can have like and there's like a massive amount, and you can have them in English, Japanese, all sorts of. You can have all sorts of different. And they've even got. I think I mentioned the arcade thing. There's a game called Viewpoint, which is one of its best ever shoot 'em ups, and it was always rock hard in a one-player game. Somehow there's a two-player. Apparently on the arcade you could do a little code thing, with jigging around, and you could get, which I'd never heard of. Anyway, so the two-player, and I only played it with Fraser, the two-player, but it's weird because it shows you to play it on your own, having somebody else. But it was strange because I hadn't played Viewpoint for years, and then suddenly to play it, dead, it's just like, oh, it's one of those games you just have to remember what's going on. While I'm here, I just want to show you this.
Yeah.
That is a book by, I can't remember the name of the author now, but Fraser, was very much instrumental in helping this get going. It's basically it's called A Visual History of the Neo Geo.
Very nice.
Some really tasty, not just screenshots, but there's the hardware, but just find a nice. That was a naff game, Ninja Combat, and Riding Hero. Ninja Combat, they walked along like they had. I think I described it in my New Earth as if they'd cacked themselves and they couldn't walk properly. It was really bad. But that was a fairly again a really simple game, League Bowling, which I don't know if you said. It was just loads of fun. It was the simplest bowling game imaginable. It was
League Bowling. Let me write that down.
That's some Metal Slug artwork there. You can see that.
Oh yeah.
Like line drawings and.
It's some of the concept art and things like that.
Yeah, there's all sorts. It's jam packed full of that stuff. I mean, this was a 16-bit, 16 plus 8-bit console. And I think Polestar came out about 94, I think, possibly. I can't remember. But, they produced in 3D sort of style graphics, and considering, how they stretched that console to do. Well, they did the same with some of the other consoles, When you look at the Mega Drive, some of its later games was actually quite. Here's a character. But this, I wasn't really aware of him back in the day, but this character with the white face guy, he was quite big in the advertising of Neo Geo in Japan, I think.
Oh, that's interesting.
But anyway, I can't remember what his name is. Samurai Showdown. Yeah, that's a good.
Nice.
Yeah. You don't mind me saying who makes it, do you?
No, go for it. It's quite nice. I can always put. I'm happy to plug stuff like that.
Bitmap Books. They've been around for years. Yes.
Brilliant.
It's www.bitmapbooks.co.uk. Fraser gave me that as a gift, it came with a T-shirt, which is somewhere in one of my drawers. It's black with the original console in gold, sort of gold outlines. It's really nice. I've never worn it. It's too good to wear, But it's. He also gave me. I don't know if you can see that red T-shirt. Terry Bogard, one of the characters in Fatal Fury.
Yeah.
He also gave me that as well.
Oh, nice one. Brilliant.
I just hung it up there for the occasion. But
good idea.
Yeah, as a teaser for if we ever do a New Earth talk.
We definitely will. Twitter was interested. There were so many retweets on New Earth stuff.
I can show you the difference between. This is how the original New Earth sort of looked. That front cover.
Oh yeah.
And basically was all done on a typewriter, and I'd just get artwork, cut it out, and then type round it. That was the technology I was using. Just another
fantastic.
Really,
nice. Are those originals? Are those originals?
These are the originals, yeah.
Wow.
But I keep them in a.
Yeah.
This is the 2018-19.
Oh, very flash.
It's come out, August 2018. That's because basically this was done on my computer, so I didn't have a computer back in the 90s. I didn't even have any sort of Commodore 64 or anything.
See the evolution there. Wow.
Yeah, it's been quite an experience being a Neo Geo fan over the years.
So you mentioned you enjoyed playing a lot of the beat 'em ups that came out. What's your favourite beat 'em up on the Neo Geo? What
do you mean, like one-on-one or a walk-along?
Walk-along type beat 'em up, yeah.
Probably Mutation Nation. It's very simplistic, and a lot of it's to do with positioning. But it's again a great music, a sort of rocky sort of music that they like to use. And they always the composer always like get something catchy, but the graphics were just spot on it. It was basically, I don't know, I can't remember. The storyline is that there's a load of mutants in the world, and you have to walk through the streets, beating the hell out of them if they're getting away, which they always do, obviously. And again, it wasn't the most technical game in the fact there was a lot of variety to it. But yeah, you go into different areas, and you could be walking along the back of a lorry, or you could be going to a town or whatever. But you'd have flying huge wasps coming down and trying to whack you, or all sorts of weird monsters, or just it'd be like humanoid but with some sort of bug head or something. Anyway, and when you as I said the other day, when you finally did the final punch, not they sort of so, or sometimes I go poof, like in a little puff, So that'd be the end of them. But yeah, it was so sharp as well. The graphics were so sharp and really colourful. I mean, in comparison, games like Burning Fight, which were a similar type, and Robo Army looked quite sort of faded almost compared with Mutation Nation. They'd really ramped it up, and it was some interesting characters. But yeah, it was a good game. It's a game that you can play with other people like that. Yeah. I like games where you can play with the other person, not against the other person. I like it when you can play together. Sort
of co-op on the couch.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it adds a lot. That's why I like shoot 'em ups as well. A lot of them are 2-player. And if you've got somebody that's interested in playing, rather than going against them, you're supporting each other, and it's good.
Yeah. What about your favourite shoot 'em up then?
It's down to 2: Viewpoint and Polestar, which I've mentioned many times because both fantastic music, both rock hard. But if anything, Viewpoint was slightly harder than Polestar, and Polestar was no pushover. I think I'd say Polestar.
Okay.
But close. They had some other fairly decent shoot 'em ups, but they were the two that. Actually, I suppose Metal Slug would be in there as well. But some people say that's not a proper shoot 'em up because it's more like a walk along fighter, but you've got weapons, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose.
But I mean, it depends how traditional you want to be. But some people it has to be a scrolling thing. Whether you like shoot 'em ups or not, they've got some fantastic music, and not just on the Neo Geo, on some of the games on the 360, and even on the Dreamcast and Saturn. That's some lovely music. Yeah. But sometimes the music was better than the game. I remember there was one on the Saturn called Blast Wind. It was I think it was an upper screen shooter. Which
Blast Wind.
Yeah, good name. Yeah, but that was the music always stuck in my head longer than after the game had got boring. But
you touched on Metal Slug. There's quite a few Metal Slugs. Which one did you prefer the most out of all of the different Metal Slugs?
I was thinking about that earlier, actually. I think I played them all, including the sort of oddball ones like Metal Slug X and Double X. But I think I'd have to say 1 or 2 really, because it was the first, and it just had so much. As I've touched on the previous chat, it was just so jam packed full of character.
Yeah.
Every little movement, even the villains, the good and your own sprites, they're just doing all sorts of. Whoever Saurus, I think it was. No, it wasn't Saurus. Anyway, it was NASCAR who programmed it. They just did. They put so much effort into it, and I think 1 was classic, but 2, I think was that the one with the zombies. I can't remember now.
Yeah, that's zombies or mummy.
Mummies. That's it. Yeah, mummies. Not. See, Neo Geo fanatics will be shouting at me. But
there'll be someone in the comments.
I'm a little bit out of date, but out of touch, I say. But yeah, the one with the mummies was pretty amazing. But I still got a real fondness for 1 because I can remember when I first got that, it wasn't on cartridge; it was on the CD. And what was good was, even though it was quite a big game, I can't remember. I think it was around just under 200 megs, which was quite big in those days. It wasn't intrusive, the loading. There was a bit at the beginning, and in between levels there'd be a bit, but it didn't ruin the fun. And I can remember I'd been looking for. I played it in the arcade, just like for 10 minutes, a couple of 10-minute sessions, and I thought, I love this game. I can't wait for that to come out. Comes out, so you're thinking, am I going to be disappointed? I can remember I had a job at the time, but I was usually finished. I had an early start and be finished for the postman, so I'd be there waiting for the van to come with this. Anyway, in comes this thing, and it didn't let me down whatsoever, because not only did it have this amazing, on the CD version, you had a combat school as well, where you could do different like little get through as far as you could on one life, or to get as
Yeah.
many kill as many people as you could in like one session. It had lots of little extras as well, and the game just didn't let you down whatsoever. You know, you could. I just played it 1 player and 2 player, and both have been really enjoyable. If you don't like Metal Slug, there's something wrong with you. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the games that stands out and holds up today. I think I played the first and the second one at yours, and then Metal Slug X, which is that meant to be like a rehash of number 2 or something,
I can't remember to be
or a
honest.
few levels from number 2 and
Yeah.
something like that. I had that on the PlayStation 1. Yesterday I downloaded Metal Slug 3 because I've not played Metal Slug 3. That looks amazing as well. I mean, that's what we go out into outer space. There's aliens and
But talking about new games, I think the most recent one, I should have looked this up, but the Metal Slug, I think it's Double X, something like that. But it came out last year, or it was either 2018, 2019, or on the PS4. I don't think it was ever on. I don't think it was on the Neo Geo itself. But it's spot on. You know, it's really enjoyable.
Yeah, after our arcade talk chat, I went and I bought just loads of it because I had Galaxy Fight and I've got copies of Metal Slug on other consoles. I just went nuts and bought a load. And I've never played Shock Troopers. Never played.
Oh yeah, that's not a bad game actually.
Oh my god, that's my current favorite game.
Yeah,
I completed it twice not completed it. I played through it twice. I did finish the game twice in a 24-hour period. I was like, oh my god, how have I never played this?
Excellent. Yeah, there's a sequel as well.
I downloaded the sequel, but I preferred the original one. I've not finished the sequel yet, but it looks very Flash. I don't know. It could just be.
No, it is. I agree with you. It's slightly different.
Yeah, it doesn't feel the same. There's something about that first one that I was. Oh my god, I love this game.
Yeah, I think when I did a review of it, I pretty much said the same thing. They put a lot of effort into making it look good, but it just doesn't feel as.
Yeah, no, it really doesn't.
But yeah, it's just it's like getting that. It's like those type of shooters, getting the controls right. You know, because sometimes you want to move, but kick and also move your arc of fire. Sometimes you want the arc of fire to stay the same, and you move and strafe across.
That game, I'm so happy with that game. I'm going to be playing that when lockdown's over. I'm going to make sure that we play it on the channel with because you can do co-op on it. There's just so many characters as well. They're all so different.
There's some real gems. I mean, there's a lot of gems, in fact. But another one was Cyberlip. Again, early. It was that could be seen as a predecessor to Metal Slug.
Oh, really?
No, not as good. No, nowhere near, but still enjoyable. You know, it was it's a bit sort of spacey, but you're taking on mutated monsters and all sorts of things. Cyberlip. Yeah, again, I think that's 90 or might be 91. I think so. It's an early game, but it's but no, you know. So again, I wouldn't say if somebody said, "What game should I get for Neo?" I wouldn't shout Cyberlip or Magician Little Butt. They are good, you know.
I quite enjoyed Street Hoop, which is basketball.
Oh yeah,
I'm not normally into basketball, but it looked fun.
That
was really good.
That to me, I think it was done by Data East. It wasn't SNK game, but it was just so Neo. I think it's like 3 aside. It's not a full team. I don't even think it's in a street thing. But again, it's got that great music I wouldn't listen to normally, but it works. That sort of, I don't know what you call that sort of, like rappy, but really good music, and it's really dramatic, and it's loads of fun.
It's so effective. It's 2 buttons, sort of barge them and grab the ball or block, and then just shoot and pass. Yeah. But it's and you
so can do big slam. You can do super slam dunks as well.
It's so much fun.
It's like typical Ninja. It's all to do with timing and where you start the move and where you finish it, and rather than pressing 6 buttons, you only got 2, but you have to time everything right. But it's simple to get into. But that is a really good game. Well, that's one of my favourites. It came out same sort of time. I think Day Trace also did Windjammers, which I think we've discussed in the past. You did a little thing. I remember one of those. Again, it's one of those games you can't believe how quick you get because it's all over the place. You're thinking, and there are a few other games on the Neo like that which I haven't heard of before until I got this sort of every single game thing. And there is a Windjammers 2 actually.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't there one that was due out or is out?
Yeah, I say I haven't kept up on it, but I think it should be out by now. But
Yeah,
whether it's as good as the original, I don't know. It looked nice. I saw
I'm
some
definitely going to
screenshots.
get it.
Yeah, but
Just
yeah, it's one of
how good
those.
the original was.
Yeah, because well, if I hadn't played it for years, and then suddenly thinking, how the hell did I keep up with the speed of the thing? You know, but you just have to tune in, don't you? And then
Yeah, some of the patterns of the special moves, as soon as you see it start to happen, you sort of run into a position to try and grab it and counter it. And yeah,
when you play games regularly, these things come instinctively a lot quicker. When you haven't played for ages,
yeah,
oh God, yeah, I can't do it. You know what's wrong with me? You know, but yeah, you have to just persevere. But yeah,
yeah,
that's a good game. That just so
definitely.
typical of the Neo Windjammers Street Hoop. Yeah, quick, simple, but lots of fun. And you know,
Very, very, and addictive as well, because
yeah,
even if you just lose slightly by 1 point, like, one more game, I'm
yeah.
going, okay, I lost again. Let me do one more and then
Uh,
just thrash them. Go, yeah, see, it was worth me playing 2 more extra
yeah.
rounds.
Well, definitely just thinking, I know why I lost that. I'm going to do it right this time, and hopefully you
Yeah,
do. But yeah, arcade games should be, in my view, you know, that's what they should look like. That's what they should play
it
like.
definitely ticks the box. Definitely ticks the box. Baseball Stars 2, because I remember playing that
Mm.
at yours, but I remember,
Yeah,
again, I would have been so young, I'd have been terrible at it. And that's fun as well. And I
yeah,
kept
it is
losing at the
really
games I
good.
was playing here the other day, but it is fun. What do you call it? Not the bowler, the pitcher.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
the pitcher,
picture.
and then you can just curl the ball off at the
Oh, it's
last
all about the
second.
pitching. If you don't pitch
Yeah,
properly, you'll get thrashed. Yeah,
yeah. It's simplistic, and yet there's a bit of complexity to, like, a nuance to it.
yes,
That you, if you were just staring at it, you wouldn't notice, but playing it, you're like, oh, it's just slight little things, and it's like, oh, that's so clever what they've done there. The way that
yeah,
you can curve it slightly, and
and fielding as
yeah,
well. It's
yeah,
this is the SNK at their best. I think. It's one of the best games.
yeah.
I
It's a
say Soccer
great.
Brawl is probably my favourite, but so it's Baseball Stars 2. If anything, is an even better game. But I just really like Soccer Brawl. But yeah,
I've
it's
been
a great
practicing
game.
soccer brawl. I will
Yeah,
maybe next time I'm
yeah,
up, we can have a game or something, and I'll
definitely.
promise to be better at it.
No, I was just thinking that when you did that to video, I was thinking,
We
no,
were terrible,
no.
terrible.
Yeah,
And
I was just thinking, no, they're trying to play it like FIFA or something. And I thought, it's like you were saying earlier about Street Hoop and Windjammers.
mm,
Same with Soccer Brawl. It's not that complicated, but I still enjoy playing
mm,
it. You know, I've played that more than any other video game.
yeah,
Uh, and okay, I may only play it for like 20 minutes, half an hour at a time. But you know, if I've got like nothing else on, and I think let's have a quick go on Soccer Brawl, you know, and it always gives me a buzz, you know. I told you last time on that arcade chat, it's the only game I've completed on one credit in the
mm,
arcades themselves. So I was quite proud of that.
yeah,
But
yeah,
2 or 3 of the games, I think it's about 6, 7 or 8. I can't remember how many games you have to win the whole
mm,
thing. But a couple or 3 of them, I had to go to penalties, and I won on the penalties.
yeah.
But now, when I play penalties at home, I hardly ever win. I just can't seem to get it. You know, it's all about. I think I must have just played it so many times before when I played it on the arcade that I could just judge which way to go, because
Yeah,
it's a matter of luck. You know,
yeah,
because you're just
yeah,
going left, right, or straight on,
yeah.
and the goalkeeper either gets or he doesn't.
I recall. Did you have a golf game on Neo
Oh
Geo as
yeah, oh
well?
yeah. I mentioned. Well, there was 2 main ones. The first one was, which again was a 1990. It's
I'll get
called
my
Top Black.
pencil out.
My favourite is Big Tournament Golf,
Turf Masters.
Turf Masters. That's the
Turf
same game.
Masters. How would you recommend the console to someone who was new to gaming? If they're like, I wanted to get into something more retro than sort of PS4 and Xbox, over say something like a Mega Drive.
I think all you could say is that if you want to experience, I'd say early to mid 90s peak arcade game playing in quite a number of genres, I'd go for the Neo Geo every time.
Mm.
Especially if you like one-on-one fighting games, really good shoot 'em ups, and also Metal Slug and things like that. It's hard to beat.
Yeah.
And some excellent sports games. I mean, we've mentioned a load of them today. You
Mm.
know, it's Street Hoop, Windjammers, Soccer Brawl, Baseball Stars 2. They're unbeatable. I've never played any games as good as those. You know, and I went through my phase playing FIFA and that other one that was really big on the PS. the PlayStation. I can't remember what it's called now.
Pro Evolution Soccer.
Yeah, that sort of series. They were good, but they never gave me the same buzz. Kabuki Clash. If they've got that on the PS4 or Switch, it's well worth having because it's beautiful to play and it's just jam packed full of character. And so I was never a one-on-one massive fan, but some games like Galaxy Fight and that really drew me in. I loved them, you know. But, I remember, so I ranted on about this game for ages. And one of the guys I used to communicate with back in the day said, "Oh, I got it," because you kept going on about it. Yeah, you're right. It's brilliant. You know, it's just, I think it's just fun. People don't realise until they actually play them how good they are. You know, yeah. Even my wife, who doesn't like one-on-one fighting at the moment, really liked Galaxy Fight.
Yeah,
she like that. Is it Yuri? That girl that's dressed in like the dominatrix.
Yeah, sort of punky. Yeah, like one of the modern X-Men type. Yeah.
Yeah, she liked that one. I was like Rumi, like you said, you like Rumi, don't you? But,
yeah.
Great to play, great to look at. She was, great character. But yeah, and I used to get that one of the mid-level bosses, just like a punch bag with a face on it, isn't it? Bouncing around. Yeah. I love all that wackiness.
That came up in Waku Waku as well, wasn't it? Because I downloaded that after you told me about that one.
Waku Waku 7, yeah.
Yeah, and boxing bags in that, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a character in that. You can use it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not as good as the maid with the Hoover. It's brilliant.
It's a bit more. It's a lot brighter and flashier than Galaxy Fight.
Yeah,
Galaxy Fight.
It's not a sequel. People thought it was, but it's not. But yeah, it's got similarities. Well, and also Galaxy Fight was completely different. It didn't have that sort of hand-painted look to it. It had it looked more like computer-generated in a way. It had that, it was very different.
Yeah.
I mean, it still had the 2D. It was 2D, but yeah, it was definitely on a different. It just looked very different from every other Neo Geo game.
And brilliant music. That sound, I still listen to the soundtrack.
Yeah, well, the soundtrack actually to Waku Waku 7's got some good stuff. Not as good, but it's pretty good.
Play it a bit more, I think.
So many games that can be brought out of being mediocre, but just how well it's presented, really. I mean, obviously, gameplay is seriously important, but presentation really makes a massive difference.
It does. And I mean, that the difference that we were saying earlier between Shock Troopers and Shock Troopers 2.
Yeah.
I was playing it and I just wanted to play the first one because it felt like it entirely different. Looked good, but it didn't have the same look or feel as the other one did.
No, that was a disappointment. Shock Troopers and 2 never came to the Neo Geo CD. Yeah,
really?
I think they might have done a few for the cartridge, but it was hard to get hold of. But that was annoying. But I remember finding that in an arcade and being really pleased,
Yeah.
Because it was like Metal Slug but different, It was the same sort of 2D sort of wacky characters, but this one went into the screen and across the screen. It was really...
Jumping back to Baseball Stars 2, was there a more futuristic, similar type baseball game?
Yes, there is a Baseball's 2020, something like that.
Is that any good, or is it?
That which was the future back then? Now it's here. But no, it wasn't as good as Baseball Stars.
Have you played? What did you make of? Because I keep seeing Sengoku 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
What do you make of those? Because I keep seeing them, but I don't know.
1 and 2 I found disappointing. Again, they're a bit like walk along beat 'em ups, but with swords. I think. Wow. Lovely some nice graphics. The animation's a bit poor. Very stylish and Japanesey, and like when you cut the top half falls away and the spirit goes up, and it's got some. But 3 is really good. I hadn't played it back in the day, and I'm not sure when it came out. Even when I was into Neo Geo, you had 1 and 2, and both I was. But when I met Fraser again, and he said, "Oh yeah, try 3. It's what it is," and it's good. When I came back to the sort of Neo Geo and reproducing the old one and then starting up, I got some really, really nice comments from old people that not old people that had followed the original, and they were getting on a bit now, not as old as me, but they've been getting on a bit, and they're basically just saying it was the only thing around. It was the only thing that kept them in touch with what was going on. Wow. So it's really nice and really encouraging. So it was really. That's why I felt a little bit guilty when I only did it for a year. But I think I didn't want to do something I wasn't going to enjoy.
Yeah. The other thing is they might not have expected you to take it up again anyway.
No.
The fact that it came back for a year is nice. If something I liked came back for a while, I'd happily support it for as long as it was going.
Yeah, I mean, it was Fraser that sort of half suggested it, and I thought, yeah, it's not a bad idea. Then I suddenly thought, what am I going to use? What shall I do? And how shall I do it? And it's, oh yeah, I can use colour now, and I can. I thought, well, I'm not going to reproduce it in paper like I did the original. I just used to send it out as an email, as you know, a copy of it. But there was quite a lot of people I was sending out. It took me ages now on the CC and the BCC. It was just a jam packed full of people that I was sending them to. So that was nice. Take your notes down, type it up properly, and then get all the pictures involved. But anyway, that's a different subject. But yeah, it was good doing it again. But yeah, it was quite a bit of work. But I particularly enjoyed seeing games I hadn't seen before, like Nightmare in the Dark. Well, I had seen, but I hadn't played before. I don't like to hark back to the past in general, but in game-wise, still see that as the golden era for me, the 90s. I'm not saying there aren't some, I just haven't moved on as well. And so I do play some modern games, Earth Defense Force and those sort of things, but I can't get drawn into Call of Duty and stuff like that. It just doesn't do anything for me. The Neo sort of encapsulated an era, really, for me anyway. And I was looking at something. In fact, they actually technically supported the system up until 2007.
Wow, that's not that long ago.
No, I was just looking up something while I was at work, and it just said something like, produced this console up until whenever it was, 1990 something, and then carried on producing games for a bit longer. Yeah. Well, I don't know what they mean by technically supported it, but I don't know. But
maybe you could send it back for repairs.
Yeah. But now they seem
to support,
because they sold out before to became SNK Playmore for a while, and because they had some of the games, and then they seem to have gone back to being just SNK and mainly producing. They are producing the odd game, let's say for PS4, like that Neo Geo Gals Collection or whatever it's called. But and also which we haven't mentioned, there was a very short-lived sequel to the Neo Geo 64. Oh, was it Super Neo Geo 64? Hyper Neo Geo 64, that was it. Hyper Neo Geo 64, which was their 64-bit. But
3D?
Well, yeah, they started doing that. They did. But this, again, I can't remember when it came out, but it was probably late 90s. But it didn't take off. I think they didn't produce more than about eight games for it. I saw them, about 3 or 4 of them in the arcades when the Neo Geo finally sort of faded, but it didn't disappear, which I thought it had done. I thought, I literally thought that was it. And it was just a memory for me. But coming back to it, and there's still these large amount of fans that really like it.
At the end of the day, it's a price thing for me because I'd much rather buy the original consoles and games than buy all the ports on the new things. But it's having the money to do that, because even if I bought the console, which the console itself is affordable, but it's the games, and certainly the games that I want, by the sounds of it, just sound.
If you want original Metal Slug, I think it's quite pricey. I mean, I haven't really looked into it, but I've been told. But there are a few that are like £10,000 and things like that. God. Just because there's hardly any of them around.
Would it be cheaper just to buy the arcade unit and a handful of their games than it would be to buy?
Yes.
Mind you, where you put it.
Yeah, they're pretty big. Say Fraser's got, I think, 1 or 2 Neo Geo. They're huge. They're pretty. They take up a lot of space. No, I'm not going to spend thousands of pounds on the games. I mean, I thought I was being pretty irresponsible spending 200 quid on a game back in the 90s. That seemed like a fortune. But I certainly wouldn't. I just wouldn't want to spend that sort of money. But if I haven't got that collector's soul that some people seem to have, they have to, if it's there and it's collectible and they can afford it, they'll get it, It's all in the past, but it's still enjoyed now. So I say, if you're a discerning gamer, if you can still get a buzz out of them, then
I've definitely got shock troopers at the moment.
It proves the point, really. Exactly what you said about Street Hoop and Windjammers is what I was saying 30 years ago. These games have got this magic. They draw you in. They're a bag of fun. You only play them for half an hour, whatever, or an hour, and you've got a buzz out of it. And that's what the Neo Geo was about. It drew you into its world, whether it was a complicated sort of fighting game with the huge backlog of characters, Or it was just like Street Hoop, but you didn't know any of the characters.
Yeah.
But you like playing it. It was just a great little game. So that is, to me, sums up the Neo Geo really.
No,
Baseball Stars 2, Soccer Brawl, Windjammers, Street Hoop, Galaxy Fight. Yeah, and Kabuki Clash. Yeah, those sort of games. So time's moving on.
Yeah, there'll be quite a lot to edit.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Anyone watching, like, share, and subscribe. Thanks, Graham, for joining us.
Pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next one.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.